Welcome to Posture 101, probably the most important module that we'll cover here today. First up, why is posture so important? Welcome to Posture 101. You will be sick listening to us about posture by the end of this course, but I think it's probably one of our biggest selling points because you will only be as good as long as your body is strong and can continue to do the work you want to for as long as you want to. You will often hear complaints about people's short careers in hands-on work, and simply because of injuries to themselves, to their hands, to their bodies, which means that it's not feasible as a career. So we take your posture and protecting your body really seriously on this course. It's probably one of the things we'll talk to you about most and pull you up on most throughout this course. So the first thing I want to talk to you about are your thumbs. People, I'm sure you've had massages with thumbs. They can be pokey, yes, they're specific, but actually your thumb is one of the smallest joints in your body. Also, like for example at mine, my thumb really hyperextends. So some people have really great strong thumbs and can use them here and there. But generally, if you think of the kind of pressure that's going to be coming from your whole body in a treatment, do you really want that going through such a small and weak joint? Especially if you have that ability to hyperextend like I do. I would say the answer is a straight no. So we tend to not use thumbs at all, and when we do, we'll talk about how we can protect that and add support for the times where we feel it's the only thing that you can use in a particular muscle or part of the body. We will take that same principle through every joint. Whether we're using fists, we'll talk about keeping that neutral wrist, so ensuring that we don't put any pressure through flexed and extended joints. We want to ensure that we're in strong neutrals, whether we're using a wrist, whether we're using a thumb, assisted fingers, or even a forearm. We will talk about how we protect our joints in each stage and each applicator that we use. So thumbs a big no-no, and also if we are using thumbs, fingers, we will always talk about how we assist and support those. Next up is our whole body mechanics. So the temptation with a lot of therapists is to get power, to get push from above. So by doing this, creating that flexed core, losing the connection with the lower body, the only place power can then come from is by using the levers available. So using the upper body, or worse again, just using the arms and shoulders. And this is where we see clients or therapists getting a lot of back injuries, shoulder problems, neck pain. We want to ensure that you don't get that. So it's always about keeping that upper body, the shoulders, neutral and soft. They're passive, simply applicators, and all of the power will come from your legs. Two key postures that we will work through in various positions on the bed and when treating clients are the lunge and the squat. So really good, strong positions that allow us to lever power from one foot to the other. So our primary first posture is the lunge. And the key thing, whether we're working in a lunge or in a squat, is that your hips are always square to the direction of your pressure. So for example, if I'm working up a client's back or leg or whatever part of the body is, I'm ensuring that my hips are square to the direction of travel. Arms always soft, whether I'm working a forearm, an elbow, chest and head up, neutral spine. Soft circles, soft arms, no pressure, no pressing down. I then simply push into the front of my back foot, lifting my heel. So now with those two grounded feet, I am getting a strong connection through the legs, up through the core, which I can then translate to my client in the pressure that they feel. So it will become effortless. You're not exerting, you're not sweating, it's simply a mechanical movement and a transfer of weight from your back leg to your front. So we'll talk about how we create that. So again, we lift our heels slightly, we really engage that back foot, grounded front foot, and we simply lift the heel as we transfer that weight forward. If we're using a squat, it's the same principle, but it just becomes a transfer of weight from one leg to the other, if we're doing rotational movement, Or if we're working in one direction, a transfer of weight from the front to the back. The next thing in terms of posture is engaging our core, and a lot of you will be familiar with this. Our effort in terms of massage is that moving forward, it's that transfer of weight from one leg to the other. So it's really important that we breathe and we engage our core. So as with anything we do, it's all about exhaling on the work. So we're inhaling and we're neutral and slowly exhaling as we move forward. So keeping those principles of strong core, aligned spine, transfer of weight means that you can give amazing depth but sensitivity to your clients because your applicators are neutral, they're listening. So it will help you to become an expert at listening to the tissue and working with your client to get the right level of pressure for them without compromising your body and ensuring longevity of career. First up is the posture that we use most when we're doing soft tissue work on clients. It's called the lunge. You get into a wide lunge, connect with the tissue, keeping your applicator soft, neutral spine throughout. Then it simply becomes a transfer of weight from the back leg to the front leg. And as that back heel lifts, you move forward through the tissue. And this is critical for 1, protecting your body, 2, making it effortless, and 3, ensuring consistent depth and pressure through the whole length of your strokes. Let's look at a quick demonstration. Okay, so we're just looking at effleurage here. Nice lunge, head up, neutral spine. So as you can see, that back heel lifts really gradually as I move through the tissue. So again, connect, see that back heel lift, 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 move, and then I shuffle. So what we want to stop happening in this lunge is overreaching. So what we don't want to see is a bend in the lumbar spine at the hip and a pivot. When you run out of space, you simply shuffle forward and come back to that transfer of weight back to front. As that heel rises, we're moving forward and we're not having to press with our arms or press with our shoulders. So really subtle movement here, but as you can see, it's effortless. My arms and hands are not tense, but I'm getting a really great depth and a consistency of depth through that movement for my client. So again, lunge, heel lifts as I travel forward. I run out of space. I can simply shuffle and move forward again. And the lunge we use for all sorts of techniques. Here I'm just doing some compression that you'll learn later. But as you can see, I'm never pushing with my arms. I'm never bending in my spine. My spine is neutral. See that back heel lift? The pressure, the movement is always coming from that back leg. It's a transfer of weight, meaning you can keep your hands, your arms, your forearms neutral and passive, and therefore listening to the tissues. Pressure is simply a transfer of weight from back leg to front. Another example here of the lunge. So what you're going to see here is sitting back into the back leg. So here I'm just doing a deep stroke through the upper traps, weights forward, and then I simply sit back onto that back leg. Look how neutral my spine and neck are, no tension. My hands are passive, my legs are driving, pulling through that tissue by simply sitting back onto the back leg. So this principle of lunge is really key to getting an effortless posture and depth. The next posture that is quite common is the squat. Again, it's quite a wide stance, so a wide squat to ensure that you can reach your client without having to bend at the hip and the back. You're going to connect with the tissue, soft applicator, neutral spine. Always neutral spine, protect yourself. And then it becomes either a transfer of weight from one leg to the other, so a side to side action, or a transfer of weight from the front of the foot to the back of the foot. And again, that's where the client is adding resistance that you don't fall over. So that will become much clearer as you get in and practice some of these techniques. So the squat, same principle, it's about a transfer of weight from one place to the other. So either from one leg to the other leg, so a side to side movement, or a transfer of weight from the front of the foot to the back. Here we've got a squat where we're transferring weight from front to back. So this is just a deep effleurage stroke through the lower back. So as you can see, I come forward onto my toes, connect with the tissue neutral spine, and simply sit back into my heels to travel through the tissue. So my spine, head, everything's relaxed, arms and hands are passive, listening to the tissue. And here, look at the side to side movement. So working through the neck, transferring weight from left leg to right leg, neutral spine throughout. And then I can easily transition into longitudinal stroke by transferring my weight from front to back of foot by simply sitting back in the squat. And a principle I'm sure you're familiar with is exhaling on the work. We need to ensure that you've got a strong core and that you are connected throughout your treatment. If you're not grounded, if you're not connected, then you're probably not going to be very connected with the client's tissue. So it's really important for protecting yourself as well as for delivering effective soft tissue work. So inhale, connect with the client, ground your feet. And then as you exhale, connect your core and move, whether that's a squat or a lunge. You're exhaling as you transfer that weight from back to front. So inhale, connect with the client, and exhale, traveling forward. Again, inhale, connect with the client, exhale, connect that core and travel through the tissue. So really, really simple principle, but it will keep you breathing throughout the treatment, no breath holding, and it will also ensure that your core is connected, which will help you transfer the weight from the floor, so from that foot, through to the client's tissues. So once we've nailed our posture, the next thing we're going to look at are applicators. So the part of our body that will be in contact with the client. And the first one we're going to look at is our hands. So with our hands, it is really important, as with any applicator, that they are completely passive. We want them to be in contact with the client's skin, but relaxed so that they can feel the tissues, listen to the tissues and start to work on that palpation, i.e. feeling the tension, the stickiness, the consistency of the tissue that you're working through, so that you can ensure you're feeling the result or the changes in the tissue as you apply the various techniques. So as you can see here, my arms are in a soft circle, so my elbows are not hyperextended, they're not tense, they're not locked out. My hands are relaxed, one on top of each other. Bottom hand passive, pressure from the back leg. The thumb. So as we talked about in the intro, the thumb is quite a weak joint, so we don't want to compromise it and we don't want to put pressure through it. However, there are times where a thumb is a really great applicator and a nice way to get into certain muscles in the body. So if we're going to use our thumb, it's really important that we keep it passive, we keep it relaxed, and we use the opposite hand on top to support it and to translate the pressure from our legs through. So let's take a look at that in practice. So again, my posture is the same as with the hands. So a nice lunge here, thumb in contact with the client, opposite hand on top. So hands and thumb relaxed. Now, as I push off that back leg and my heel rises, the pressure is coming through my thumb without me pushing with that thumb, so without me compromising that joint. Again, beautiful neutral spine through here, pressure's coming from the legs, movement is coming from the legs. Again, in my squat, same principle, the weight is going from the back of my foot to the front of my foot. My thumb is passive, opposite hand on top, and then just transfer the weight. Next, let's look at assisted fingers. Same principle here. There are times where the fingers, maybe 2 fingers, 1 finger, 3 fingers, are the right applicator to get into a part of the body. But then if we're going to use fingers, we use the opposite hand on top for the pressure to translate through. So as we create movement and power from the legs, the top hand translates that power through the fingers, therefore protecting our finger joints and ensuring that we're not straining on them. So let's have a look here. I'm just doing a deep effleurage through the quadratus lumborum, so between the ribs and the hip. So I have 2 fingers here, opposite hand on top, transfer that weight, hands relaxed, listening to the tissue. So you can see that transfer of weight from front to back as I sit back in my squat. My hands can pull through the tissue, but my fingers are relaxed, listening to the tissue, and most importantly, are supported. Next is the fist. So a soft fist, soft being the key word here, is a beautiful applicator. It's broad, it's subtle, but you can get a lovely depth with it. What we don't want is a clenched, tight fist with pressure coming from your shoulders. So keep the wrist relaxed and remember the power comes from the legs. Note here, neutral wrist. I don't want to see flexion or extension. We keep it neutral. If you need your opposite hand, you can support that wrist if you find it difficult to maintain a neutral wrist. Pressure is coming from the back leg of my lunge as I move through the tissue, slowly, subtly, the fist translating that pressure from the legs, but because it's soft, I can also feel what's going on with the tissues. So a beautiful applicator. If you have a strong wrist and you're able to maintain that neutral wrist, then you don't need to support it. But don't lock out your elbow. Keep a soft elbow, neutral spine, and simply transfer the weight from the legs. Finally, my favourite applicators, the forearm and elbow. The forearm is great. Because it's broader, you can still get a great depth, but it's almost subtler. And I find that the client can take more pressure through the forearm because it's a subtle, broad applicator. The elbow, again, allows you to get really specific, so areas where you might have used fingers or thumb, but because it's a much stronger joint, it's much better for you as the client. And it's also a lot subtler for the client. So this one benefits both you and the client and will allow you to translate lovely depth consistently through your strokes. So you'll note I have to drop into a deeper lunge because I lose 7 or 8 inches when I drop to a forearm. Wrist relaxed. This is key. Floppy hand, floppy wrist. If your hand is clenched or straight out, your fingers tense, your client will be tense too, and it will lead to a deep stroke that your client won't be able to tolerate. Whereas when you keep that softness in your wrist, it allows you to listen to the tissue better. So again, pressure's coming from that back leg, it's coming from the legs. I'm not pushing with my arms. Wrist relaxed, and as I transfer that weight, lifting the back heel, my forearm applies that pressure, translates that pressure to the client's tissues. Now, if I want to get a little bit more specific, so say for example here I want to work through those erector spinae, I will simply flex my elbow so that my elbow itself can become that applicator to the client. So note here I'm going to change, so I'm going to flex my elbow, so now my elbow's in contact. Keep that wrist, that hand floppy. So I always liken this to like a swan. The swan's head, so a long neck in your forearm and its head is your hand. Keep it floppy, keep it relaxed. And as you lift that back heel, transferring the weight, you're moving through the client's tissue. So a beautiful soft applicator, which believe me, if you practice and practice and practice, you will be able to palpate and feel the client's tissues as well through that elbow as you will through your hands. Enjoy!